It seems that the crisis amongst men is now at a stage where the mainstream and basically everyone and his mother can't ignore it anymore. So you'll have mainstream outlets like CNN and CBS reporting on it, and also sort of semi-mainstream outlets that you will encounter online, on YouTube, alternative news, as it were, and news that purports to be different from the mainstream, but also not too edgy or too controversial. Recently, there was Pew Research that came out that indicated that almost twice as many women have relationships compared to men between the ages of 18 and 29. It was about 63% of women versus 34% of men. And we see this again and again and again. This isn't anything new. Those of us who've been talking about these issues for a much longer time are well aware of. You could say that many of us saw the storm coming, and the storm is now here. It's going to get a lot worse, I think, by the way, but that's a topic for a separate discussion. But it's interesting because I mentioned not too long ago how, in an effort to bring it all back to women's concerns, women's sensitivity, women's feels in the world, with respect to women and their choosiness versus men's absolute lack of choice whatsoever, I mentioned how many times people try to equate the male situation with the female situation in the dating market. So women are so choosy that psychologically, them having 20 different choices doesn't mean anything, or it's the equivalent of men having no choices. And that's what I want to talk about today. There is a repeated pattern I've noticed again and again and again, that every time there's a male issue that is largely male specific, virtually nothing is exclusively male or female when it comes to psychological or social issues, but in the majority, let us say, when an issue is a male issue and can be framed as such in the majority, you'll get these people coming in, some of them screeching, not all of them. Many of them are much more subtle, because God forbid the conversation becomes a conversation about men and the things that they're dealing with. This has been noted for quite some time, but there is no such thing as exclusive male spaces. In physical reality, you won't find an all-male gym, you won't find traditional places where men used to hang out, boys' clubs, etc., etc. But this, of course, was again noted over 10 years ago. You won't find that really online either. Sure, you'll get places where more men congregate on average than women. But if there's any sense of exclusivity to it, then red flags will be raised and all hell will have to be paid for it. So, as long as you frame it in a way that suggests that there might be an issue that predominantly affects men, that's a problem, at least in the eyes of the many and perhaps the mainstream, and certainly the eyes of women. And one of the techniques I've noticed, a pernicious technique, if I do say so myself, is what I call the friendly approach. Now, what is the friendly approach? Rather than saying, for example, that a guy who has no choices in the dating market versus a woman with 20 choices, saying, well, it's actually the same thing because of female psychology, what happens with the friendly approach is more along the lines of, I hear you totally, I'm on the same page, and I really think that men and women aren't that different at all. We're not all that different. Yes, there might be some small differences, but by and large, we're breathing the same air, we eat the same food, the problems overlap, and I think this notion of exclusive talk about male issues and male problems and male frustration really only serves a toxic goal, and it doesn't really help people, either men or women. What we need is a more general human conversation about the plight affecting human beings, not a conversation that's exclusively about men and the problems they face. And you can see where I'm going with this. It's an attempt to massage the problem to the point of amorphousness, to the point where you get this amorphous blob of, well, we're all human beings, we're all in the same boat, and if you don't agree that we're all in the same amorphous boat, you're being toxic, you're being hostile, you're being a separatist, things of this nature. Now, it's a pretty cunning strategy, I have to admit, because you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you say, look, I think there are issues that men face, and they tend to be separate from the issues women face on average, and indeed in the majority, then yes, you're a separatist. You're not trying to get on the same page and help everyone equally. If you agree with the nebulous statement that we're all the same, we all breathe the same air and eat the same food, then you're also not helping the men who are, in fact, suffering in reality from male-specific problems. And so this is an excellent way. I've noticed some people attempt to shut down proper conversations about male existence, the male plight, and things that men face in general. It's the exact equivalent or the friendly approach. Oh, men and women face the exact same issues. They're not that different, not at the end of the day. Now, I've seen this tactic used constantly in recent months, unsurprisingly, most of the time, by women. Women in conversations with men, women talking about dating issues, social issues, emotional issues, psychological issues, etc., etc. And it really goes to show the general, I hate to say it, gynocentric nature of the current social order. The fact that, let's be honest, talking about a male issue is something akin to blasphemy. And more importantly, even when it's an important issue, an issue that really affects men in the worst ways, like self-deletion, for example, which, let's be honest, 80% of the successful self-deletions in the United States are male. The rate amongst young people compared to women is 4 times higher among men. And then these people have the gall to come in and say, look, we're all suffering. We're all breathing the same air. The issue affects everyone. There are some subtle differences, but the issue in general is the same. Now, in specific, I remember a streamer who was talking to a bunch of guys, describing the situation, again, as the same. It's basically the same. It's not helpful to talk about differences between men and women. And you couldn't help but notice all the attention she was getting from men versus the complete lack of attention on the opposite end men were getting from women, and her then trying to say that's comparable. Mostly because, and here's the trick here, here's the way you decipher this stuff, gentlemen. Women are all about the feels. If they feel a certain way, isolated, emotionally disconnected, it doesn't matter if they're surrounded by a gazillion people and everyone is calling them up on their phone left and right to hang out with them. It's all about the feeling and perception. Now, are there some women out there that are completely isolated socially? Yes. But that number is vanishingly small compared to the number of men. Men simply face fundamentally different challenges because men are different. Who would have thought that different sewage systems, long-term, in evolutionary terms, of course, would lead to different social outcomes, different psychological outcomes, different across the board? And the issue really at the end of the day is, you can talk about this until you're blue in the face. I can't solve the world's problems. You can't either. Most people can't. The mainstream can't either, although you could argue they have more reach and more pull. Why would it happen, though? But if they're not sincere about it, well, nothing's going to happen. Because here's the harsh reality. The reality is that women actually get a lot of help. They get a lot of help in school. They get a lot of help at university, from the state, from the government. They get a lot of help socially. They're getting help left and right. And then, after getting all that help, they get to parade around claiming how triumphant they are in that they attend university more frequently than men or they're out earning men. Sure, if you're getting constant help from people who are pushing you up the mountain, such that if you do fall, they'll catch you for sure, that doesn't say a whole lot. What kind of help are men getting? Nothing. And let's be honest here. Human beings as a category, and here's a generality that is true, we need help, whether men or women. We all fail at some point in time. We all falter. We all need some kind of support system to get us back on our feet, to keep us going. Where does that exist for men in the current meta? Nowhere. So yes, the mainstream can complain, the pseudo-mainstream can complain, YouTubers can complain all day, but if men are never incentivized through external aid, acknowledgement of certain problems, there will not be a change here. And obviously a big part of this is the fact that if you want to help men, that's seen as hostile to women. There's that exclusive dibs on, we get the help, we get the financial aid, we get the support. If you were to suggest, for example, a boys' club or a young male club where they do woodworking exclusively and it's only men, and you wanted the local, municipal taxes to pay for it, there would be hell and high water to pay for that. That would never happen because it would be seen as antithetical and hostile to women. So that's the situation we're in. Men actually do need help. Women have been getting help nonstop. They have not done this on their own. Let's be honest about this. If they are, in fact, out-earning men, if they're outperforming them at school, yada, 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 they have been getting help nonstop. What's the kind of help that young men and boys get? Well, by way of contrast, they get Ritalin shoved down their throats and they're told to sit still and shut up. That's not helping. Clearly not. And claiming that men and women are just the same and the problems are pretty much the same and that it's toxic or separatist to cite differences and talk about the very real issues that men face, that's not helping either. That's just a tactic, probably a female tactic, to massage the problem into amorphousness, into oblivion, such that you no longer even need to acknowledge problems as male as such. As always, special thanks to my patrons. You keep the channel going. Really appreciate you guys. And if you go through the usual YouTube motions of liking the video, commenting, and sharing the video with other people, subscribing if you're not a sub of mine yet, would really appreciate it. And if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. Until the next time, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye.
If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.